Professor Mwakyusa, welcome. Thank you for talking to us. You were minister for 5 years, which is quite a record as far as ministers of health concerned. The average tenure for a minister of health is around 2.5 years. Can you explain in the first instance why you think ministers of health generally have such a short term in office?
No. It's true. I was minister in my country for 5 years. But as to why I stayed that long, I don't know. Because the constitution in my country says the president is going to constitute the cabinet.
Mm.
He chooses who he likes and can drop you anytime.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you must have done something right. Do
I
you
don't
have
know.
any idea what the secret to this might be?
Then, not that I know of really. And actually we had some upheavals in between because twice he changed his cabinet.
Uh-huh.
And at one point, about 17 of the ministers and deputy ministers were sacked. But on both occasions I remained, and I remained in the same ministry. Some of my colleagues who remained actually were sent to other ministries.
Mm.
So actually I wouldn't know, because there are no set criteria which guides a president to say you should choose who. It's not like here where if the president wants someone to become a minister, you have to, I think he has got to go through the cabinet.
Has to be approved by Congress,
yes, by
right?
Congress.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's not the case at home. So he has been given that mandate, and he has his agenda. He wants things done.
Do ministers have performance criteria? Did you know what you were expected to do?
No. We went to a seminar. This is the first time I heard that a president calls his ministers for a seminar. We were together with regional commissioners and so on and so forth. So he gave a broad outline of what he expected in every field.
Mm. So it was based on policy?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
but not to minute details that I want maternal mortality to nothing like that.
Mm.
So I don't know, maybe I did something he wanted me to do, and then I stayed on during the whole of his first phase of his presidency, the first 5 years.
Did you anticipate to be appointed minister?
No, actually, I came at the beginning of his tenure, and we normally go into voting in the election. And then when I was elected in my constituency, we go to parliament, you swear in, and then he chooses a prime minister who has to come to parliament for us to say, yeah, we agree. And then the president and the prime minister and the vice president sit together to constitute the cabinet. And usually it doesn't even leak. You don't know who's going to be. So what happened this time, I didn't expect actually. And I had planned to go back to my constituency, to move around in the villages to thank my voters for having the trust in me. And when I was preparing for that, he announced his cabinet. And I heard that he was going to meet the press, but I never thought, I didn't know what he was going to say, nor did I watch on the TV. Later, my friends and colleagues and relatives started calling me on the phone. Some came home to congratulate me. That's how I knew about it, but I was not expecting, and it was a surprise.
So once the initial celebrations died down and you found yourself in the office of the minister in the Ministry of Health, what were your thoughts?
I wouldn't call it a celebration, because being a member of parliament is a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And when you become a minister, this is another full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to do both of them well, it means you have to work very hard.
Did you feel that you knew what you had to do as a minister? Had you been prepared? I'm now a minister. What on earth does a minister do?
No. Maybe the only advantage I had is that I've grown in the health field as a doctor, and I did some administration. I was a district medical officer. I was a director of our main hospital. So you get some ideas of what you may want to do, because I worked very closely with the other ministers of health who were there. So when I went there the first day, you know, it is suicidal to think you know everything. And that is my policy. Wherever I go, I want to go with an open mind, be ready to learn. Yeah, I didn't plan. I had my ideas, but I didn't plan to say, this is what I'm going to do. So the first day, we arranged such that all the directors at the ministry level, everyone came to present about his or her department, what they were doing, what they were intending to do, what were the constraints, and how they had planned to do them. So they would present, there would be a Q&A, and that took about 2 or 3 days. I would ask questions, and then I told them I wanted whatever they presented in writing, so that I sit back and try to find out and formulate what my direction would be. So at least I knew where to start. I started getting my own ideas. And actually about 2 weeks later, the president came to my ministry, and he went to other ministries as well. Normally the president summons you to the State House. This time he went from ministry to ministry, and when he came to my ministry, I had my deputy minister was there, my permanent secretary, and some of the senior staff. The first question he asked me was, Professor, where are you going to take this ministry to? And that was a difficult question, because I had never led a ministry before. And also we are not prepared. If I was there for 3-4 months, then I would say I had prepared something. But I had to say something. It's my boss. I had to reflect on what was happening in my constituency, because 5 years up to that point, I was a member of parliament. So
you knew what was going on the ground.
Yes, exactly.
Right. It seems to me that you touch on what is probably the central balancing act that a minister has to perform while in office. On the one hand, you need to maintain the confidence of the president and the broad support of government, so the political support. But on the other hand, you can't do very much without the support of the civil servants. So that's a tricky act. You had a proactive president, so I'm assuming that he was on your side and the politics was aligned in your favor. Did you ever feel that the civil servants were obstructionists, that they weren't fully in support, that you really had to struggle to get things done?
No, I wish they were there. They might say how they accepted me, if they thought I was acceptable. But I think I have that personality of getting around and mixing with people. And having taught at the medical school for so many years before I went into politics, it just happens that quite a few of them actually were my students.
Oh, okay.
So there was some allegiance. I found that even in the regions, when you go to visit a hospital, the regional medical officer was a student, and so on and so forth. So really, the little leadership skills that I acquired, I never went to any school for that, was that you shouldn't assume you know everything, be ready to learn. And also the agenda I wanted to be furthered during my time. I would say I managed to get people to chip in and own the agenda together with me, rather than...
How did you do that?
Well, I did quite a few things. For instance, I came up with the Primary Healthcare Services Development Program.
That was your idea?
It was my idea.
Okay.
It was my idea because 80% of our people live in the villages.
Right.
The little health infrastructure that you find in the country, and what was left by the British when they left, when we got our independence, was in the few towns that are dotted around the place. And we thought that was not fair, because all the people, most of the people are out there. We have to come up with some system that should work, which would address the problems of the people there. So there was this primary health care development program.
Okay. So that was your flagship, you would
Yes.
say? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, well, I asked the people around me, and we came out with something concrete. And we had a seminar, a whole week seminar in Arusha, where there is a hall which can hold many people, 600 of them, right up to people working in the districts, you know, nurses, pharmacists, doctors. And we went through there, through the document. It's not a small document, because it went through page by page of what we want to do. And then they became the teachers, trainers of others there.
Okay.
So after some time, it took about a year to get all the feedbacks, and then we came up with this document.
Do you feel that having a flagship program like that is something that helps mobilize support across the ministry? You mentioned it went all the way down to district level.
I believe that it should be the case. In my time as director in Muhimbili, we had some strikes, a few strikes, and most of them were because a circular has come up from the government, from the ministry, and we implementers were not involved, you know. So they write something which looks very good, and usually it talks about money and so on and so forth. But when it comes to implementation, it gave us a lot of problems.
Because they hadn't been consulted?
Yeah, they've not been consulted. The implementers were not consulted. If we were, we might have seen some holes in this, and we think if you plug this area and that area, things might go fine.
So your experience, I think, as a politician from the rural areas must have stood you in good stead. You're used to listening to a lot of people.
Probably, yeah, yes.
What are the other challenges for a health minister, probably more so than almost any other portfolio, is the need to work intersectorally. You had to work with other ministries and get their support.
Yeah.
How did that work out for you? I mean, how were you able to do that? Because other ministers are jealous in guarding their funding, and they might support you rhetorically, but are not necessarily going to share their budget with you.
Well, if they're jealous, that would be their problem. Certainly, I would like more money for my ministry. And when you sit around the table, the Minister for Finance says, this is the money we are going to get from taxes and from donors and so on and so forth. And my planning unit thinks that we should apportion it this way and this way and that way. And everybody would say, there's not enough money for my ministry. But the president will ask you, which ministry you want me to make a cut so that I give you more money. Yeah. So jealousy or no jealousy, this is the problem. But the way you can get more money is to go with a solid plan for the money.
To who? To the Minister of Finance?
No.
The President?
The Minister of Finance is the custodian of our money. It's not that you speak nice with him, then he gives you more money. No. It is, well, I can say the President can
decide.
You know, yeah. So if you talk about needing more money, the question is for what? Which means you really have to have programs and projects which look implementable. You create a reason and a need, and everybody says, I think he has a point. And then how, you know, the usual, how you're going to spend it, monitoring and evaluation, what results you expect, and what period of time. So you go in with a package of what you want to do, which has been costed, and then, you know, you may find that you say, okay, why people say, why can't you make it for 5 years instead of, you know, with the economy in this state? Do you think we can do that, and so on and so forth? I think that helped me because the Minister of Health was not quite in the priority list. Yeah, and
of the other ministers or the government in general?
I mean, the priority in the sense of prioritizing who should get more money. Yeah, for funding. Yeah, we have a lot of problems, say, with the infrastructure, roads and so on, and they get a lot of money, and then education, and then third came my Minister of Health, because I had a lot of support from the President himself, so this political will, whether he thought health should be given a priority before he became president or because of the interaction with me, I don't know. But he actually, at one point, people were asking me, you want to make him the Minister for Health? Because I was using him at different rallies when I went, you know, there is something I can talk, but if he talks, it goes further.
Much more powerful.
Yes, if I want to launch something, or it is a World Malaria Day, I invite him. You find all the media are there and so on, so they reach far right into the village.
So the President had your back. Did that, and you've indicated that some of your colleagues were a little edgy about that, did that translate into increased money? It did increase your resources?
Yeah, I don't know about my colleagues, how my colleagues were feeling about me, but it did increase the resources. That is why I say in the priority list, we came up to number 3, and I think the funding kind of doubled.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It seems to me that your combination of ingredients for the success and your long tenure would be humility on the one hand, your ability to listen and learn, not to assume that you know everything, and political savvy. Do you think that's a good combination for most ministers?
I think so. I think that is the package we need for a minister. I think that is what one needs, and you know, at home, being a minister, you're a big person. You're a big person. Even among parliamentarians, there are people we move around with, and they'll tell you outright if they think you feel too grand. They'll tell you that you know, in Parliament we sit in the front bench. You say, I mean, you're sitting in the front bench. It can be temporary. You never know. I can come and sit in that seat you're in today. So don't ostracize them. They would like to meet with you. I know I'm always with problem. Can you help me with the human resource and X-rays is broken and things like that? Listen. And we have a canteen. I always met with them in the canteen over coffee, tea, and so on. But you hear sometimes people saying he's not approachable, and that's not a thing.
Right, it's not a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you always have time for them.
Yes.
Because what you give is in the budget, and it's so easy to say this year I don't have that money in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see if I can make a case next time. Yeah.
Is there one thing that you wish you could have done differently or done over again?
Oh, I don't know. As I said earlier, I've been a leader, and I always told my people I was leading that I'm not a boss. And I never went to any leadership school. When I was in Muhimbili with our main hospital, I would look after all the administrative issues, finance, planning, even to sack people who were stealing this and so on and so on. Something I had never learned in a medical school. So, but as a leader, I became a leader, I don't know if I was a good leader, but I became a leader through doing things I never learned anywhere. But also, I learned through my mistakes. So as I discovered mistakes along the way, I would correct and go on and go on. Yeah. So I wouldn't say there's something that comes to my mind that I did wrong and I
But
didn't
be prepared to correct course as you find your way.
Because I made hundreds of mistakes. But the good thing is, if it comes to my knowledge, or someone tells me, or I discover, you know, you do it better next time when you go along.
Thank you so much for talking to us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.